Tracks like this are seriously underrated for their ability to enhance your skills as a bike rider. They're called pump tracks because you utilize a pumping motion with your body as opposed to pedaling to create and carry speed as you ride around the track. There are dirt, cement, and asphalt versions, but the basics are pretty much the same no matter which one you choose to ride. Learning to effectively ride a pump track helps increase your bike handling skills, but it also makes you a faster and more efficient rider. The other benefit of pump tracks is that you get a ton of repetition in a short amount of time, so you can smash a ton of practice and progression as you rip laps around it. So what is pumping and why do we need it? Pumping is common in almost every sport, from skateboarding, wake surfing, BMX, and of course mountain biking. It's how we use our body to build forward momentum, which can help us create speed without the assistance of pedaling. Think about some of your favorite trails. There are likely some spots where you can't get a pedal in. But if you can utilize pumping, you've uncovered a new way to get faster while you ride. In fact, with enough practice, you can actually ride faster by pumping than pedaling. The ultimate example of this is the 2015 World Cup in Leogang, Austria. Aaron Gwin snapped his chain at the top of the racetrack and had to pump his bike all the way down to the bottom. Not only did he ride an entire downhill race without pedaling, but he won the race too. So today we're riding the pump track at Gateway Green in Portland, Oregon. Pump tracks like this one are popping up all over the world, and we're going to give you everything you need to make the most out of it. My oldest son Teegan is riding with me today, and we just completed a nationwide road trip to the most iconic trails in America. The day that we practiced his skills on the pump track made the biggest change in his riding over the course of the trip, which is why we wanted to put some more focus onto this skill. We've got two bikes here today, my Marin Alcatraz Dirt Jumper and my Rift Zone 2. The Dirt Jumper is the ultimate bike for pump tracks because you get the most direct feedback from the bike. There's not much suspension to soak up the pump, so you can get instant feedback on your effort. I also think Dirt Jumpers are a great way for most skills practice as they're simpler, lighter, and cheaper than most mountain bikes. I'm going to ride my full suspension bike today just to show that it's possible on any bike. The only thing we're going to do to this bike is lock out the suspension and pump up the tires a bit more. You want to have the lowest possible rolling resistance with the tires, and you want to have the bike as rigid as possible. That way you get maximum feedback from the pump track as you practice your technique. The other thing I did to Teegan's bike is that I left my trials gear ratio on his bike from the time that I modified it into a trials bike. This lighter gear ratio makes it so he can't cheat and uses pedals whenever he's riding the pump track. The amount of rollers here make it hard enough to pedal, but I'm not taking any chances. Okay, now that we have our bike set up, let's talk about the different elements of the pump track. There are three terms that you should know at the pump track: berm, roller, and transition. The pump track mirrors everything that we would see on a trail, so the corners here are called berms. These bumps are called rollers, and anywhere in between where you see the track sloping either up or down is called a transition. The real key to riding a pump track is to get the maximum use out of every transition to create and maintain speed. I like to think of pumping transitions like a speed boost in a video game. You know when you hit those little patches and it makes you go faster? That's exactly what pumping can do for you on the trail or at the pump track. Out of nowhere, you can add more speed just by making one simple motion. So what we're gonna start with, I'm gonna have you ride around this pump track one time with no pumping. And this is gonna be kind of like our control timing. That way we have a baseline to work off of to see how much faster you get when you actually get into the serious pumping. So give me one lap and I'll time you. Okay, your time was 27.95 seconds. And I saw a few pedals in there, which was sort of necessary to get you around the whole thing. But I can't wait to see how fast it's actually gonna be when you start pumping, because I think you're gonna go way faster. It's easy to see the struggle and also how hard it was for him to sneak in pedals on the track. If you're riding a trail, it's not always a guarantee that you'll be able to pedal either, so that's why this skill is so necessary. You'll need to carry and create speed throughout certain sections, even if you can't pedal. So let's talk about pumping specifically. The general idea is that when we get to the top of the roller, we want to push down through our pedals as much weight on the wheels as we possibly can. Doing that will accelerate our momentum on the backside of the transition, which gives us the speed boost. To actually pump, you'll need to push your weight down on the bike by bending your knees and elbows. You'll push your weight into the bike, and I like to think of this idea that I'm pushing my wheels as hard as I can into the ground. But that's only half of the skill. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The most important part of the roller is on the way up. Because we have a transition up to the top of the roller and then down, we should also be thinking about our weight on the way up the roller too. We want to make our bike light so it quickly rolls up that first part and carries momentum. If you can stand up on the bike and unweight it on the way up the roller, that sets you up for the maximum pump into the backside of the roller. This is sort of like preloading the motion, and it will help you substantially on the backside of the roller when you push down. You'll get the feeling that you did it right when you feel the speed boost. If you are going too slow or you pump too early, you won't really feel anything. I like to time the motion when my back wheel is cresting the roller and my front wheel is facing down the transition. You also need a little speed to get it going. This can be a little harder to do if you're going too slow. Okay, so I'm gonna time you again. This time, no pedaling, and pump as hard as you can on the rollers to see how fast you can make it around.
All right.
16.45 seconds. So you knocked 10 seconds off of your lap just by pumping into the rollers. That was pretty good, but there's still a little bit of room for improvement. I'm gonna film Teegan riding a lap so that we can see exactly what he's doing. That's actually the best way to improve, is to see what your body is doing, because a lot of times what you think you're doing versus what you're actually doing, there's a pretty big gap between those two things. It probably felt like you were pumping like crazy as you rode this, but see how your body's barely moving as you go around the track?
Yeah.
Let's take this back to flat ground. We're gonna do something that's kind of ridiculous, but it's gonna make a huge difference when you ride around the pump track. Okay, we're gonna learn something called clown pumping, and it looks absolutely ridiculous in practice, but when you apply it to the pump track, it makes a huge difference and makes you go a ton faster. So imagine like a cartoon clown who's like pumping up a balloon like this. You're gonna go on flat ground and do exactly that, and over exaggerate it as far as you possibly can, even though it looks ridiculous. And I promise I won't put this clip in the video.
Are you sure about that?
I mean, maybe. I'll look ridiculous first and then you try.
I just gotta get a point of reference.
The more ridiculous, the better.
Yeah.
See, it's ridiculous.
All right.
What it does is it breaks you out of your pattern of where you've been so far. So you're out of your comfort zone, and outside of your comfort zone is where all the progression happens. So this is partially to get the feel for how much you can move on the bike, but it's also just to break you out of that space so that when you get back to the pump track, it will actually work and you're gonna feel a huge difference.
Okay.
Get deep. Yeah. There you go. Put your knees out a little bit. There you go. How'd that feel?
Pretty good. I think I hit my butt on the tire a few times.
That's how you know you're going super deep. Just don't do that at speed or it will end in tears.
Yeah, that sounds like that would hurt.
This is exactly what breaks you out of that space where you were maybe going like this before, and now you feel like how far you can actually go and what the actual range of motion is on the bike, and that's exactly what this is meant to do. Now that you've got your clown pumping on lock, I want you to take it immediately over to the pump track, and I'm gonna time you to see how fast your lap is now that you're incorporating that exact movement. All right, I'm gonna time you. So now clown pumping, go as fast as you possibly can, and let's see how much of a difference it makes.
No brakes. Let's do it.
No brakes?
No brakes.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Dude, 13:53, you smashed it.
Yeah.
Pretty good, dude.
I think that's progress.
You started with 26 seconds and you ended up with 13. So the basic pumping skill can make a big difference, but let's talk about how to apply this to berms, which are the other most common feature in pump tracks. One big mistake I see riders make is that they don't use the berms to carry and create speed. Just like we pump the transition of the rollers, we can also use gravity to our advantage on berms in the pump track. Instead of riding low, try to stay high in the corner as long as you can, then pump on your way back down at the end to build a little extra speed. As you progress your skills at the pump track, you're going to start linking together the fastest lines, both on the rollers and through the berms. If you're lucky enough to have one like this that has multiple lines, you can experiment with it all to find new ways to build and maintain your speed on the bike. Ultimately, this is all practice that applies directly to the trails. Now that you know how to pump and what it feels like to utilize it to create speed, you'll start seeing transitions on the trail more often, which are all opportunities to create and carry speed on your ride. A whole new world will open up to you, and it will get even easier to go faster and flow through trails.